Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16, Text number 43. This is an interesting meter called Arya, and I don't know a nice melody for it. If someone else does, they can. It's not our normal meter we have. Na vyabhacharati taveksha Na vyabhicharati taveksha Yaya hya bhito bhagavat dharma Yaya hya bhito bhagavato dharma Sthirachara sattva kadambesh Sthirachara sattva kadambesh Apritagdiyo yam upasate tvarayaha Apritagdiyo yam upasate tvarayaha. Others? Na, not. Vyabhicharati, fails. Tava, your. Iksha, outlook. Yaya, by which he, abhihita, declared. Bhagavata, in relationship with your instructions and activities. Dharma, religious principle. Sthira, non-moving. Chara, moving. Sattva kadambeshu, among the living entities. Apritakdiya, who do not consider distinctions. Yam, which. Upasate, follow. To, certainly. Aryaha, those who are advanced in civilization. Translation: My dear Lord, one's occupational duty is instructed in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita according to your point of view, which never deviates from the highest goal of life. Those who follow their occupational duties under your supervision, being equal to all living entities, moving and non-moving, and not considering high and low, are called Aryans. Such Aryans worship you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Please repeat. My dear Lord, one's occupational duty is instructed in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita according to your point of view, which never deviates from the highest goal of life. Those who follow their occupational duties under your supervision, being equal to all living entities, moving and non-moving, and not considering high and low, are called Aryans. Such Aryans worship you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Bhagavad Dharma and Krishna Katha are identical. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted everyone to become a guru and preach the instructions of Krishna everywhere, from Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Puranas, Vedanta Sutra, and similar Vedic literatures. Aryans, who are advanced in civilization, follow Bhagavad Dharma. Prahlad Maharaj, though merely a child of 5 years, recommended Komara acharet pragno dharman bhagavataniha durlabam manasam janma tat apyadhruvam arthidam. Bhagavatam 761. There's no translation. Prahlad Maharaj preached Bhagavad Dharma among his classmates as soon as an opportunity was afforded by the absence of his teachers from the classroom. He said that from the very beginning of life, from the age of 5, children should be instructed about Bhagavad Dharma, because a human form of life, which is very rarely attained, is meant for understanding this subject. Bhagavad Dharma means living according to the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad-Gita, we find that the Supreme Lord has arranged human society in 4 social divisions, namely Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. Again, the Puranas and other Vedic literatures set forth 4 ashrams, which are the divisions of spiritual life. Therefore, Bhagavad Dharma means the Varnashram Dharma of the 4 social and 4 spiritual divisions. The members of human society who strictly follow the principles of Bhagavad Dharma and live according to the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are called Aryans, or Arya. A civilization of Aryans who strictly follow the instructions of the Lord and never deviate from those instructions is perfect. Such civilized men do not discriminate between trees, animals, human beings, and other living entities. Pandita Samadarshinaha. Because they are completely educated in Krishna consciousness, they see all living entities equally. Aryans do not kill even a small plant unnecessarily, not to speak of cutting trees for sense gratification. At the present moment, throughout the world, killing is prominent. Men are killing trees, they're killing animals, and they're killing other human beings. Also, all for sense gratification. This is not an Aryan civilization. It's stated here, Stira Chara Sattva Kadambesh Apritagdiya. The word Apritagdiya indicates that Aryans do not distinguish between lower and higher grades of life. All life should be protected. All living beings have a right to live, even the trees and plants. This is the basic principle of an Aryan civilization. Apart from the lower living entities, those who have come to the platform of human civilization should be divided into a society of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. The Brahmins should follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as stated in Bhagavad-Gita and other Vedic literatures. The criterion must be guna and karma. In other words, one should acquire the qualities of a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra and act accordingly. This is a civilization accepted by the Aryans. Why do they accept it? They accept it because they are very much eager to satisfy Krishna. This is perfect civilization. Aryans do not deviate from the instructions of Krishna, nor do they have doubts about Krishna, but non-Aryans and other demoniac people fail to follow the instructions of Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. This is because they have been trained in sense gratification at the cost of all other living entities. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma. Their only business is to indulge in all kinds of forbidden activities for sense gratification. Yad indriya pritya aprinoti. They deviate in this way because they want to gratify their senses. They have no other occupation or ambition. Their method of civilization is condemned in the previous verse. Yakchemo nijaparaya kiyanvarta saparadruha dharmena. What is the meaning of a civilization that kills oneself and others? It's a very good question. Let's read that again. What is the meaning of a civilization that kills oneself and others? This verse, therefore, advises that everyone become a member of the Aryan civilization and accept the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should conduct his social, political, and religious affairs according to his instructions. We are spreading the Krishna consciousness movement to try to establish a society the way that Krishna wants it. This is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. We are therefore presenting Bhagavad-Gita as it is and kicking out all kinds of mental concoction. Fools and rascals interpret Bhagavad-Gita in their own way. When Krishna says, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me, end of quote, they comment that it's not Krishna to whom we must surrender. Thus they derive imaginary meanings from Bhagavad-Gita. The Krishna consciousness movement, however, strictly follows Bhagavad Dharma, the instructions of Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam for the complete welfare of human society. One who misinterprets Bhagavad-Gita, twisting out some meaning for his sense gratification, is a non-Aryan. Therefore, commentaries on Bhagavad-Gita by such persons should be immediately rejected. One should try to follow Bhagavad-Gita as it is. In Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 12, text 6 and 7, Lord Shri Krishna says, Ye tu sarvani karmani mayi sanyasya matparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayayanta upasate te shamaham samudarta mityu sangsara sagarat Bhavamina chirat parta maevi shita chetasam. Quote, for one who worships me, giving up all his activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, who has fixed his mind upon me, was son of Pritha, for him I'm the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Gora graganya gana gotra goloruharam Goranga gudatama gopyada kopa briksham Gopala gada ratidam yati singha gora Govinda deshikavaram satatam namami Panchakopa darubhishcha kripasindhu bhyevacha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. So I feel very shy to sit in this very, we say in little traditional language in America, very august assembly. It means very learned and wise assembly, especially in front of Panchagoda Prabhu, who's my revered guard uncle and temple president here in Krishna Balaram Mandir. I pray the devotees may bless us that we can try to say something for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada writes here in the purport, what is the meaning of a civilization that kills oneself and others? Well, this is a very, very interesting subject. There's so many topics in this purport. I'm already deviating from the one I wanted to speak on, but I'd just like to touch on this a little bit. Today, people are very enamored by something called globalization. It's like the new religion for this age. Right? And we all have some hope for globalization. Because now we're become very modern, and we have jet airplanes. We can go anywhere practically in one day. You can be right there in some jungle with some aborigines, some distant mountaintop. You can practically go anywhere you want to in the world. And now everybody's becoming advanced because they're learning English. Right? That's very advanced. Huh? And people are also becoming advanced because they understand they're following America. In America, there's something they call the Declaration of Independence, and they had us memorize this when I was a young boy. Please forgive me, I'm going to quote just a sentence or two from it. It begins by stating, we declare these truths to be self-evident. Okay? So he's saying, hey, listen people, what we're about to say is self-evident. It's really obvious that all men are created equal. Yes. Huh? And that's supposed to be the basis of the commercial monster that's attacking the world today, which they call American so-called culture. Uh-huh. So the idea is that everybody's equal, but how are we equal? They didn't mention that little point. Uh-huh. You look around here in the room. How is everybody equal? Some people are older, some people are younger, some can't sit on the floor, they're sitting in chairs. Some people are very handsome or beautiful. Some people, well, don't hate me. Some people are very intelligent and educated. Some are rich, some are weak, some are strong. There's so many. Where is equality? But we all understand intuitively this principle that we're all equal. We must be. But how? There's so many problems in the world today. And we would try to just even touch on 1% of those problems, it would take the rest of the class. Right? And there's so many solutions for these so-called problems. And people want to be philanthropic. People want to help with education. Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Sajjana Toshini, he says there's 3 types of mercy. Dehadoya, Manadoya, and Jivadoya. Dehadoya means you do some mercy to the body. It's cold, it's winter time, they're shivering, they're in exile from their country because there's a terrible war going on. So you give them some shelter, a place to stay, and some food. That's Dehadoya. That's kindness to the body. But many people prefer Manadoya. Manadoya means kindness to the mind. Let's open universities. That's the real solution. Let's educate people. If people become educated, then they can lift themselves up from the worst of poverty, the most terrible situations, and they can achieve the topmost situation. After all, the Prime Minister of India today used to be a tea salesman, right? We think like that. But Bhaktivinoda says both of those types of mercy ultimately fail. And really only Jivadoya, or mercy to the soul, is real mercy. And if we consider the matter carefully, the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam states unequivocally, Pashyat Paka Viparyasam. All your so-called solutions are what, when I was growing up in America, what we used to call the philosophy of Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear. Once there was a rabbit, it was a very intelligent rabbit, and there was a fox and a bear. And the bear and the fox, they weren't so intelligent. They were always trying to capture the rabbit, but he always got away. So one day, they made a small baby out of tar, and they put it in the middle of the road. And they put some little button eyes on it and dressed it somehow and everything. And the rabbit came along after a while. The wolf and the fox and the bear were waiting in the bushes. And the rabbit came along. He's a talkative fellow. He said, "Hey, how's it going, man?" Started talking to the doll. And the doll was made out of tar, didn't have anything to say. And the rabbit said, "Hey, you're pretty rude. I'm talking to you. You should answer me." No reply. So then the rabbit said, "Look, you either answer me or I'm going to give you a good slap." And so then baby didn't say anything, and the rabbit hit him. And what happened? His paw immediately became stuck. And he became more angry. He said, "Hey, let go of me now. I'm going to really hit you hard." Didn't let go. So then he hit him with the other paw. Now what's going on? He's caught with both his upper limbs. So now he's in desperation. He wants to get away. So what does he do? He puts his feet there and starts pushing with his feet. And he becomes completely captivated. So this is Pasyat Pakar Viparyasam. All the solutions in the material world ultimately fail. And all the solutions that you create only create more problems. We've seen it so many times, all of us. I'm a brahmachari. And life as a brahmachari is a little tough. I don't get any respect. And I'm a little lonely. So it would be really good if I got married, especially to some beautiful girl. So then somehow with Krishna makes some arrangement. And we do that. Very happy days, right? But that thing that we accepted to solve our problem of our agitated senses only causes so many more problems, and more and more and more and more. Pasyat Paka Viparyasam. So all the different solutions in this world, all the eco-villages, all the Save the Trees movement, all the Save the Seals, Save the Whales, Save this, Save that, all those things are ultimately and necessarily going to fail. Because they don't take into consideration a change of consciousness. We should very boldly, very strongly, without any doubt, preach this movement. This was Srila Prabhupada's strong desire. This Krishna consciousness movement is the only solution for overlogging in Brazil and destroying the rainforests. It's the only solution for climate problems. It's the only solution for war. It's the only solution everywhere. Now you may say, well, that's a little grandiose, but consider it. Because all your other solutions don't change the consciousness of the person. You may temporarily solve the problem. You can plant some trees. You can somehow get a ceasefire declared in Syria. You can take care of the refugees. You can do this, you can do that. But ultimately, the problems are going to come back. Because the real problems are us. The problems are the evil consciousness, the desire to lord it over and enjoy that we have in this material world. So what's necessary is to give people, to train them how to have a change in consciousness. But charity begins at home. That begins with us. We have to first change our consciousness. I remember when I was growing up in Los Angeles as a devotee book distributor, we used to listen to recordings of Vaisheshika Prabhu and other heroes of our book distribution movement. And I remember Vaish used to tell us that you don't sell the book, you sell yourself. And when you go there, you should be the happiest, most ecstatic person they've ever met. They're not interested in a book, and they're probably not going to understand much of anything you have to say about it. But if they're impressed by you, by the devotee, then they'll accept that thing. So this is Bhagavad Dharma. This is Aryan culture. And this Bhagavad Dharma means that we treat everyone equally. Pandita Samadarshana. We see everyone in an equal platform, but not in a sentimental way, like someone wants to go and just, Prabhu, we should just love everyone. And so you run into the zoo and you go and embrace a tiger. And your love revolution is very short. We have to, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sings a Deho Nata Jata Jata. According to the situation, the position of the person, we behave accordingly. Now there's a very important subject matter in this purport that I'd like to speak about that I feel a little sad doesn't always get very much time in our movement. And that is trees and the importance of trees in Krishna consciousness. Trees are a very interesting thing. Prabhupada speaks about it here in the purport. Let me find the spot. Aryans do not kill even a small plant unnecessarily, not to speak of cutting trees for sense gratification. At the present moment, throughout the world, killing is prominent. Men are killing trees, they're killing animals, and they're killing other human beings also, all for sense gratification. We don't know how to live on this world. Sometimes when you speak to a Christian and you're trying to convince them to be vegetarian, they say, no. In the book of Genesis and the Bible, it says that God gave man dominion over the earth. Dominion is an old English word for those who don't understand it. It means he made man the boss, put him in charge. But being the boss doesn't mean you have a right to eat the bodies of your workers, to kill them and exploit them. Being the boss, having dominion, means that you have to take care of them. And this is Aryan Dharma, this is Bhagavad Dharma. This is the result of Krishna Katha. This is the purpose of Varnashram Dharma. So one of the things that should be respected and protected in Aryan culture and Varnashram culture are the trees. Trees, in Sanskrit, the word is briksha. It's a common word for them. Briksha comes from the bij dhatu, vrascha. And vrascha means literally to cut something down. A tree is a living entity that its very meaning of its name is I'm going to be cut down. But an Aryan culture, a wise culture, understands when to do that and when not to do that. Trees are worshipped in Vedic culture. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, chapter 22, after the Vastraharana Leela, Krishna begins to glorify the trees of Braj, the trees in general, to his sakhas, his cowherd boyfriends. Pashyaitan mahabhagan parataikanta jivitan vatavarsata pahiman sahanto varayantina. Krishna says, just see these trees. Their lives are dedicated completely to the benefit of others. And even while these trees are tolerating so much wind, rain, heat, and snow, they protect us from the same wind, rain, heat, and snow. Even though while they're tolerating these things, trees are so very, very special. He says, Aho esham vidam janma sarva pranyupajivanam sajana sheva yesham vai vimukya yanti nartina. Just see how these trees, he said, are maintaining every living entity. Their birth is successful. Their behavior is just like that of great personalities. For anyone who asks anything from a tree never goes away disappointed. Trees give everything that they have. There's a nice poem one of my goduncles reminded me of recently, that we used to recite when I was a young boy. Please tolerate. A nice poem. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the sweet earth's flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow is lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. The trees in Vedic culture also are considered very, very special. Prabhupada describes in many different purports the importance of trees. There's a very interesting purport in the third canto, chapter 29, text 28. Please listen. He says, in the Moksha Dharma section of the Mahabharata, it is stated that trees have developed sense perception. They can see and smell. Okay? Trees can see and trees can smell. Prabhupada says we know by experience that trees can see. Sometimes in its growth, a large tree changes its course of development to avoid some hindrances. This means that a tree can see, and according to Mahabharata, a tree can also smell. This indicates the development of sense perception. Very interesting. I was just reading something recently about trees. I like trees very much. And scientists have been doing some very interesting research which completely supports what Srila Prabhupada is saying. Prabhupada's saying here that trees can smell. If you show this to the average person on the street, if they're polite, they'll probably smile a little bit. Or they may, if they're not so polite, they may laugh at you. Trees can smell, sure, buddy. But about 40 years ago, in the 1950s, scientists started doing some research in Africa on the savannah, the plains there. And they were looking at the interesting relationship between the giraffe and the acacia tree. And they found that the giraffes would only eat for a little while on one tree, and then they go away. And the scientists wondered, why is that? Because the giraffes were still hungry. They tested the tree, and they found that the tree is very nice and sweet, the leaves for that giraffe. But when it realizes it's being attacked by the giraffe, the tree starts giving off ethylene gas from its leaves. And all of a sudden the leaves become very bitter. And interestingly, that gas puts out a fragrance, a very subtle fragrance, that the other trees nearby can smell. And then the other trees, they also start releasing this gas. And so it answered a question they had, because the giraffes, they would eat a little bit from one acacia tree, and then they would stop, and then they would go a long distance away. They wouldn't go to the next trees over, because they already got the message. Because there is communication between trees. A little different method of communication than we have, but there is communication. And they found the giraffes would either go some distance or they would go upwind, where the other trees couldn't smell the ethylene gas that had been released from the first tree, and they hadn't caught on yet to the danger. Another series of tests from British Columbia and Vancouver a few years ago found that trees also communicate through fungi. Fungi is like a moss and things that grow at the roots of trees. And this Dr. Suzanne Simard, she said that these fungi, they're like fiber optic internet cables, which send chemical signals to the network of these fungus trees, to the other trees, and they also communicate, she found, doing some tests, through electrical impulses. Same kind of electrical impulses we have in the human body, only a whole lot slower. They travel about 1/3 of an inch per second. Trees are a little slow compared to human beings. And they communicate with each other in this way about dangers from insects and drought and other problems. And more recently, some scientists from the University of Western Australia, they found that trees communicate in another interesting way. They had a question, they were wondering, do trees make sounds? And Prabhupada says here in the purport that trees can hear. Do trees make sounds? But how do you tell? If you put a meter here on our Tamal tree in the Krishna Balaram Mandir, how are you going to be able to tell? There's so many noises going on, so many people talking during class. Class is going on and the kirtan's going on. You can't tell. And you can't tell always in the forest either. There's so many wind and so many. It needs to be in a laboratory. Trees are not really very compatible with laboratories. But they started growing some small trees, and they put some very powerful recording devices on the roots. And they found that those roots would vibrate about 220 hertz, such a soft sound, the human ear can't hear it. And they found that when they would make a similar sound near other trees, those trees would start turning toward that sound. And so many different studies have been done on plants. Also, when Dr. Bose here in India did research, he took and planted in a greenhouse, same kind of soil, same kind of water, same kind of light, 4 different plants. And one greenhouse, he subjected, same kind of plants, 4 different greenhouses. One, he subjected it to Indian ragas. And one, he subjected it to Western classical music. And another one, 3 different categories. Another, he subjected to rock and roll music. And he found that, and another was there was 4. The other one, he didn't have any music. And the one there was no music, they just grew in an ordinary way. The one where there was classical music being played, Western classical music, the plants grew in the direction of the sound. They can hear, as Srila Prabhupada is saying in the purport. They can communicate. And the ones where he was playing the ragas, they grew like 4 times better, and they all grew in the direction of the ragas. And you may be wondering, the ones that they played the rock and roll music, well, they died. Anyway, Prabhupada says so many things about trees, and Prabhupada also was very caring about trees, and there's many, many stories devotees may have heard. In the Dallas Gurukul in the early days, there was one tree that had been hit by a storm or something, and it was falling over. And the manager there decided that it's dangerous for the children. So he called in a tree expert and asked him what should be done. And he said, no, this tree should be cut down. It could fall down any moment. Tree should be cut down. Okay. So they cut the tree down. A few days later, Srila Prabhupada came to Dallas, and he went for his morning walk around the temple. And when he saw that tree, Prabhupada stopped, and he slapped his cane in the ground, and he very strongly asked, who's done this? Who's killed this tree? And the devotee was stammering, well, Srila Prabhupada, I did because this and this. And Prabhupada said, you're a fool. You should not kill trees. And then somebody said, well, Prabhupada, see, it's still alive. There's a little leaf coming out somewhere. And Prabhupada just became disgusted and walked away. Similar thing happened in Juhu when they were developing the property there. Prabhupada went out for a morning walk one day, and he noted that one of the trees had been cut down in the street in front of the temple area. And Prabhupada asked what happened. They said, well, it was the municipality, the government, they had this rule, we had to do that. And Prabhupada said, you go to them and tell them it's part of our religion. Giriraj Maharaj tells this story. He says, part of our religion, not to cut trees and not to do this. He said, I've been to other countries and I saw sometimes they keep trees in the middle of the street and they put some asphalt around it. And so if you go to the Juhu temple today, you'll see out on the street there's a tree with some asphalt around it, still alive. That tree was saved by Srila Prabhupada. And most famously, we have the Tamal tree here in the Krishna Balaram Mandir. Originally when the plans were made to construct the temple here, they planned on cutting the tree down. And Guru Das, who was in charge at that time, he says that Prabhupada's dear friend and godbrother, Krishnadas Babaji, came to Prabhupada and reported to him that they're going to cut a tamal tree down. Tamal trees are very rare and they're very special. They say they only grow in Braj. I know 2 growing by the Tota Gopinath temple in Jagannath Puri. That's another subject. Anyway, and Prabhupada stopped it. And Prabhupada liked the tree so very, very much. And he would come every day and have darshan of the deities and sit in the shade under that tree. And he even writes about it in one purport in the 10th canto, the Bhagavatam, how important this tree is. Devotees should have some consciousness. They should have some awareness of things. There's another nice story in this regard. There was one wealthy man who once went to West Bengal and he wanted to do bhajan, wanted to become a Vaishnav. And he heard about a great saint who you've probably heard of. His name was Gaur-Kishore Das Babaji. And he went to him and he said that, Maharaj, I'm here, I'm trying to do some good in the Dham. And this person who was a very wealthy landowner, he said, no, it's not my desire for my own personal sense gratification. I just want to see that devotees are nicely served and all the bhajan kutirs are kept very well. And so all these places of solitary worship, they've all become jungles. So now I've gone to those areas and I've cut down the brush and cleared the area so the Vaishnavas, the sadhus, can do their bhajan. When Gaur-Kishore Das Babaji heard this, he became very angry. And he chastised that man. And he wouldn't discuss with him any longer. And then finally he told him, finally after that person got up and left, Gaur-Kishore told the devotees that the trees in Navadvip are all Kopa-briksha trees. And this hypocrite rascal has very cruelly cut them down. Now he's come and told me this. Shame, shame, just see. If one cuts one limb from the trees in Navadvip Dham, I feel great distress. These different trees and vines in Sri Navadvip Dham are my eternal friends and associates. They are part of the pastimes of Lord Gauranga. After one's friends and associates have been killed, is it possible for someone to come and cut their dead bodies to pieces? This very cruel person will never be able to do bhajan. He'll simply act like a Vaishnav, which will only result in his own inauspiciousness and inauspiciousness for the whole world. So Prabhupada speaks here about the importance of Varnashram Dharma, and in some purports also he speaks about Varnashram Dharma in connection with trees. In one purport in the 2nd canto, chapter 8, text 21, he says, pious acts are prescribed in the supplementary Vedas, Smritis, which specifically mention what? Digging tanks and wells for the water supply of the people in general, to plant trees on the public roads, to construct public temples and places of worship of God, to establish places of charity where poor destitutes can be provided with foodstuff and similar other activities are auspicious. So Prabhupada wanted that. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, he speaks also about the importance of Vaidhi Bhaktas following the rules of Varnashram Dharma. And he says a very powerful thing in chapter 20. He says that one who is qualified for Vaidhi Bhakti must maintain his journey in life while staying in this world. To do this, he is obliged. This is the obligation of all Vaidhi Bhaktas. He's obliged to worship, meditate on, take care of, and offer obeisances to useful and shade-giving trees, such as the pipila tree, to fruit-bearing trees such as the amalaki, and to worshipful trees such as tulsi, to cows and other animals, to Brahmins who protect society by giving instructions on Dharma, and to Vaishnavas. The Vaidhi Bhaktas protect the world by performing these activities. Many places in Vedic literature, doing such pious acts is encouraged. And you may dismiss that and say, well, this is just Shubha karma, and we're not interested in it. But in the Gita, Krishna says, pious acts should never be given up. We should never discourage people from feeding other people. We should never discourage people from planting trees or doing good things. But how is it going to benefit them, you may ask, in an ultimate way? Prabhupada gives a nice example in the purport in 2nd canto we just read. He says, one pious act is to plant trees on the road. Up until a couple of years ago, just before Navakalevaram, on the road going from Bhubaneswar to Jagannath Puri in Orissa, there were huge trees that were over 500 years old. Some people say they were planted under the order of Maharaj Prataparudra, the associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And people are encouraged to do that. Why did they do that? Because the roadway, the pathway is very hot when people are going. And if there's some shade, it'll give them some relief. They're also encouraged to dig wells and make ponds, and you'll find many of those also between Bhubaneswar and Jagannath Puri. And pilgrims, as they're going, they can stop and take bath. They can drink some water. They can take some fruit from a tree. They can get something. Now you may say, well, this is just mundane charity. And it's true if it's an ordinary person. But what happens when a Mahabhagavat Vaishnav happens to be walking on that road to Jagannath Puri, and he sits under that tree? He takes some of the fruit from that tree. He drinks some water from the well you dug, or took bath in the pukur that you built. Then that person who did those pious acts, they get some bhakti unmukhi sakriti. They get some pious act which leads to bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada, it's a whole other subject matter, and our time is finished. I want to stop soon. But Srila Prabhupada, he said many times that this Krishna consciousness movement is meant to establish Varnashram Dharma. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says a similar thing in many of his books. In Chaitanya Siksamrita, he puts it in a very strong way, very clear way. He said, as long as you have material desires, you must follow the rules of Varnashram Dharma. But, as Srila Prabhupada points out here in the purport, that's for the purpose of Samsiddhir Haritoshanam, for the purpose of making one Krishna conscious, to please Krishna. If we don't do that, then there's no value in the Varnashram Dharma. We're dressing in a certain way, we have some certain rules, and we may have a lot of etiquette and culture, but what's the value of it? We don't care for that. There's an interesting conversation Bhaktivinoda has written in Jaiva Dharma in chapter 7 when he speaks about Grihastha Dharma. And one devotee's asking his guru, can Grihastha devotees follow the Varnashram Dharma system? Is it possible for a Grihastha to become a Vaishnav without following Varnashram? Very good question. Can you become, it's a $64,000 questions they say in the game shows. Can you become a Vaishnav without following Varnashram Dharma? And this is the answer. His guru answered, and he told him, if you only knew how magnanimous, how broad the Vaishnava Dharma is. He said another name for Vaishnava Dharma is Jaiva Dharma, the religion for all human beings. Every human being is qualified to join Vaishnava Dharma. Even outcasts may embrace Vaishnava Dharma, and they can live as Grihastha Bhaktas, someone who's an outcast. And he says, for them, there's no Varnashram. Someone who's an outcast. Prabhupada said in a similar conversation in 1968, which I have here, I'll just paraphrase it. Madhavananda was asking some similar things about Varnashram, and Prabhupada said, did you come here because of Varnashram? Were you doing Varnashram before you joined here? Madhavananda said, well, Prabhupada, I was a hippie. I wasn't doing Varnashram Dharma before. Prabhupada said, so why do you need Varnashram? He said, in this age, it's not possible. Of course, Prabhupada said different things at different times. This was in 1968. And later on, Srila Prabhupada said very strongly, in a number of purports, the purpose of the Krishna conscious movement is to establish Varnashram Dharma. But we should understand the context of that. It's actually a very subtle thing. It's a very deep thing. So I'd like to continue this discussion. He says, it's almost finished. For someone who is an outcast, there's no Varnashram for that person. It becomes a Vaishnava. For someone who breaks the Varnashram rules of sannyas, but later they associate with elevated devotees, and they attain Sudha Bhakti, pure Bhakti, then they can be householder devotees, and for them there are no rules of Varnashram. He says those persons who, because of their misdeeds, their misbehavior, have left the Varnashram system, can still, along with their children, take shelter of pure Bhakti in the association of devotees. He said then they're to be known as Grihastha Vaishnavas. But they're also not part of the Varnashram system. He says there are two types of Grihastha Bhaktas. Varnashram Dharma Yukta are those persons who accept Varnashram Dharma and they follow that. And Varnashram Dharma Rahita are those persons who are outside Varnashram. And the devotee asks his guru, which of the two of these is better? The Grihastha who follows the Varnashram or the one who doesn't? And he gives such a good answer. He said, the one who has more devotion. He's the better one. Because bhakti is everything. He says, as for those who have no devotion, materialistic society will consider them within their Varnashram society as the best. Because of the two, at least they have some position in society, while the other is an outcast. But from the spiritual point of view, they're both degraded. For neither has any bhakti. So our purpose, the purpose of this movement, is to develop Krishna Bhakti, Bhagavad Dharma. And that's real Aryan culture. That's the real purpose of Varnashram Dharma. To help people and even to help devotees who are not properly situated in Bhakti. We follow certain principles of Varnashram Dharma, but in his commentary on the 11th verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Varnashram Dharma or those other things shouldn't cover Bhakti. And he says it may cover Bhakti in one of two ways. Number one, you might think that Varnashram Dharma is the goal. That's the goal of life, to become a good Brahmin, to become rightly situated in Varnashram. But if you're thinking like that, he said that's covering Bhakti. And the second way it may cover Bhakti, he says, is that someone may think, I have to do Varnashram. If I don't, I can't practice Bhakti. He said that also covers Bhakti. Therefore, Krishna tells Uddhava in the 11th canto, Bhaktya Sanjayate Bhaktya, that Bhakti comes from Bhakti. Bhakti stu Bhagavad Bhakta Sangena Parijayate. It comes from the devotees who are practicing Bhakti. It comes from practicing the activities of Bhakti in association with devotees. That gives bhakti. Nothing else is required. Sanatana Goswami says in one commentary, not even humility. Rather, bhakti will give you humility. So I've gone a little over time. Please forgive me. And thank you all so very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Go Premanande Hari Hari Bo, Vanchakalpatarubhishcha, Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha, Paritanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah.